Happy Halloween! This is the first Halloween on my channel, so I wanted to do something spooky to honor my favorite time of year. So in this rather laid-back episode, I'd like to talk about my favorite Vocaloid horror songs. Now, to preface in case anyone doesn't know what I mean by Vocaloid, I am referring to the vocal synthesis music software. The most well-known voice and character of the voice bank is, of course, HatsuneMiku, but there are many other characters that producers use and even create lore for through their music, sometimes taking their artistic liberties to some really gross and questionable places, especially with Kagame Len for whatever reason, who is supposed to be a 14-year-old boy. I'm sorry, Len. I think a lot of people view Vocaloid music as a dead genre or a fad, especially Vocaloid horror. This kind of music is already a pretty niche genre of music in the grand scheme of the world, so Vocaloid horror is even more so hidden amongst the shadows and the depths of the internet. The software was first released in 2004, and producers specializing in horror started popping up around 2008, and the whole genre of Vocaloid music kind of fell out of the limelight after 2015-ish. This is coming from a Western perspective, of course. I know plenty of Japanese Vocaloid producers who are alive and well to this day. In fact, I saw Kiku live not too long ago. It's just that we're far past the days of real-life holographic Miku concerts, unfortunately. Anyway, Vocaloid horror is a pretty funny topic for me. To be frank, I think that most of it's not very good. The songs that are trying to creep you out oftentimes go overboard and rely on shock tactics, which often result in a lot of senseless noise or overly wordy descriptions of scary scenes, which really just doesn't do it for me. Think Fear Garden or Gomene or Bacterial Contamination or Coin Locker Baby. A lot of the time, the music ends up being very busy and fast and really doesn't lend itself to the horror genre at all. This makes it so that I have a hard time sitting through even the most popular Vocaloid songs, not because they effectively unsettle me, but because they don't unsettle me enough, or it's just not very good musically. It ends up being very samey. Masaworks Design is especially guilty of this, I think. Given the era, I suppose this is expected, but unfortunately most of the genre suffers from I'm 14 and this is deep syndrome. I don't mean to be so harsh. I'm doing a lot of complaining and not a lot of spooking. So why are you making a video about it if you don't even— Because Vocaloid horror fascinates me. I think there's so much untapped potential in horror-centric Vocaloid music. It's already the perfect medium for it. The very idea of a non-human, computerized singer allows for so many transhumanist hypotheticals we could utilize. Things like robots and cyborgs and even computer viruses and things like that are pretty horror-adjacent. Especially in the internet age, there's just so much you could do with it. It's also a great opportunity to subvert your expectations and catch you off guard. Most people who know what a Vocaloid is passively maybe just know it as, like, cute anime girl music. You know, po-pi-po. I really believe there's a huge opportunity here to make some real incredible, real horrifying stuff. It's just that most of it doesn't quite get there. However, there are a few diamonds in the rough that I would like to celebrate today in honor of Halloween. So I have 5 picked out that I want to talk about, maybe even introduce you to for the first time. So enjoy my list of my favorite horror Vocaloid songs. I'm gonna be ordering them from least scary to most scary. I don't know, maybe that kind of diminishes the early entries. So I'll just go by like imagery and feel and all that. They're all in this list because I think they're all really good. They're here for a reason, but they'll steadily get more and more disturbing. First up, I want to talk about Apple.com. This came out in 2016. It's by Pinocchio P, and they use HatsuneMiku as the singer. I know this song kind of goes against everything I just said about not being outwardly creepy, especially if you don't pay attention to the lyrics, but I think the song still succeeds in being a rather uncomfortable, maybe even disturbing experience for the listener, and it's actually an enjoyable and memorable sounding song. What makes this song unsettling is the relatability. It's a bouncy and upbeat song, but the lyrics speak of compounding problems in day-to-day life, such as not being able to go through with a job application, dealing with two-faced people, wasting money, searching for a phone plan, and slowly coming to the realization that you aren't really able to handle it all. You're neglecting yourself, you're not trying to become any better, until you begin to make poor decisions. Decisions that may land you in prison with only a red apple to eat. And only then can you finally appreciate something in your life, after everything else is gone due to your own unwillingness to change. As the hook reads, I'm rotting away as I neglect myself. My face is smiling, but there's a dart piercing it. It's such a pain, so I'm not going to do anything. I've got all kinds of debts, lumped together, haphazardly. Next is a song from 2008 by Kichi. It's sung by Miku, and it's called Love, Love, Nightmare. This one has very little in the way of lyrics. In fact, most of it is these disjointed Miku noises, set to a pretty consistent electronica beat, but that is exactly why this song is on the list. Miku's jittering and repeating voice sounds like she's short-circuiting, which is exactly the kind of thing I wish horror producers played into more instead of... One source I found said that these repeating lines actually translate to, I want to eat your eyes and your ears too. Which is great if true, I just can't 100% confirm that myself because I don't speak Japanese, and most sources don't bother translating that portion of the song. So with that in mind, and the few lines she sings during the bridges, the song hints at an obsessive and desperate form of love that overtakes Miku and manifests as cannibalistic ideations. This song turns Miku into the ever-present yandere character trope, which, assuming you don't know, is a common character trope usually used for female characters who are so obsessively in love with somebody that it turns into a serious form of mental illness, often to the point of becoming a possessive and deranged murderer for the sake of their love interest. Next is a song from 2022. This one is sung by Gumi, and the song is called Fruiting Bodies.
But something's next in the back of my mind and I think about it anyway. My mind's eyes defined by contrariety. I just wanna eat your flesh. People say I am not the one I claim to be. Won't you tell me what you think of that?
Most of my songs on this list are sung by HatsuneMiku. She's the most popular. But Gumi is another really popular choice among horror producers for whatever reason. I like her a lot. She's my favorite, actually. But people really like to use her in horror settings. So this one I recommend you listen to while reading the lyrics. There's this problem I've noticed with some Vocaloid music where it doesn't really age well or upload well, I guess. And the sound gets pretty muddled with the electronic noise happening, and the lyrics become harder to parse, despite this one even being in English. Maybe it's just me, but I run into this often with some really dense Vocaloid music. With that said though, this song is on the list because it does some very interesting things. The lyrics vaguely allude to feelings of paranoia that manifest as fungus sprouting from Gumi's pores. It's a nice bit of body horror. It plays with tempo and time signature, which emphasizes the sort of off-kilter sound RIP was going for. It also does this neat thing where at the end of every pre-chorus, a second, lower, distorted voice repeats the last line, and it sounds very cool. It really sells the song for me and is definitely the highlight. It's so creepy, it sounds like an ominous, disembodied voice coming from outside of Gumi's own thoughts. I think this one is really fun. It has a very pleasing rhyming scheme, it takes parts of Entry of the Gladiators, so it sounds a bit circusy, which is always a plus in my book, and it actually sounds like Halloween to me. Next is another song that features HatsuneMiku from 2008. This is Okasan by Machigerita P. The P stands for producer, by the way, in case you were wondering why that's so common. This is perhaps one of the more infamous ones on the list. I really enjoy the sound of the song. The tone it sets is just stellar, which is rare for me with this genre, it really is. It shares some elements with industrial and punk genres and really resonates with me from a sound perspective. It's fast-paced and amps you up while remaining pretty rhythm-heavy, but still utilizes the Vocaloid medium to its advantage in subtle ways. The whole song is built on these droning, anxiety-inducing arpeggios. The lyrics are more so said in a sing-songy tone rather than actually being sung, if that made any sense. The lyrics allude to a story of child abuse, told from the perspective of a child hiding from her mother, who intends to kill her. My mother is here, only her neck will be twisting. It achieves a wonderfully creepy tone, while still being a song I would actually choose to listen to. In terms of actually enjoyable music, this has to be my favorite. I think the final pick is the best example of Vocaloid horror, but well, you'll see what I mean. Real quick, I'm gonna give you all a content warning right here. Up until now, everything has been relatively tame and palatable, so if you are unfamiliar with this one, just know that it gets pretty dark and upsetting. So, please proceed with caution. You've been warned. This is a song from 2010. The Vocaloid used is Kaiyuki, made by Mondai GP. This is Crushed Mary. The best way I can describe Crushed Mary to you is that it sounds like agony. It's not exactly a song in the traditional sense. It's more of an experience than a song. It's simplistic in that it doesn't have any semblance of a traditional song structure. The only lyrics are repeating, "Mary, where are you?" all while the digital sound of machinery grinding and screeching against itself, and an erratic bass drum pounds away. Be warned though, if you're going to listen to this one with headphones, turn the volume way down. A lot of the times with Vocaloid horror, there's a special attempt made to tell an intricate story through the lyrics, or describe a gory scene to up the shock value, but Crushed Mary gives just enough that your imagination takes over to fill in the gaps as to what's happening. It's super effective as a horror piece, and I think is a really unique approach to horror music in general. It's an extremely distressing experience in the way that it taps into this deeply rooted fear in the human psyche, as opposed to just making an unpalatable song with a lot of loud and unpleasant noise for the sake of being loud and unpleasant. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does get loud and unpleasant, but it's done in a really effective way that just leaves you feeling like you need to take a shower at the end of it. All of this is compounded by the medium itself. It really utilizes the slightly uncanny and synthesized Vocaloid sound to its advantage, which I think gets lost or overlooked in a lot of Vocaloid horror, despite being what you'd think would be the main draw of the software in the context of horror. Of course, Kaiyuki, the Vocaloid being used here, is a child. I think canonically she's supposed to be 4 years old, and she has just this tiny desperation in her voice that's not urgent, it's just fearful. Since a lot of the time artists like to establish lore for the characters they're using or tell a specific story, people have speculated a lot about what Crushed Mary is meant to be about. Some even theorizing that it's about real-life murder victim, the 4-year-old Mari Kono, who was murdered by Tsutomu Miyazaki, also known as the Otaku Killer. Besides the similarity between the names and ages, there really isn't much else connecting the very real and tragic case and this song, so I don't believe Crushed Mary is attempting to tell Mari Kono's story at all. The most commonly agreed upon meaning is a fictional story about 2 young girls, presumably Yuki and Mary, who are out playing somewhere dangerous, such as a scrapyard. Yuki loses track of Mary and begins looking around for her, as the feeling that something is very wrong begins to grow. The horrible, grinding sounds get worse. At the very end, we hear Yuki's small voice saying, "What? You are here?" And the loud, screeching climax and one final, meaty snap. This could imply a couple different things here. Yuki finds the mangled remains of Mary, and the loud noises that follow could mean that Yuki is actively witnessing the moment where some kind of machinery, maybe a car crusher, decapitates Mary. We can draw that conclusion from the accompanying album art. Abstract scribbles, perhaps a child's drawing, of what looks to be a little girl's body with a backpack on, and her head twisted all the way around, and colored into a black void with a tiny red pinpoint for an eye. Or perhaps that horrible sound at the end implies that upon discovering Mary, something terrible happens to Yuki too, since we no longer hear her speak after that. Or, my favorite theory, is that the final grating crescendo is the representation of the horrific trauma that affects Yuki's innocent child mind immediately upon seeing the viscera of what's left of her best friend, entangled in the unforgiving and cold metal of the landscape. Crushed Mary leaves you with an atrocious feeling inside. It's on a whole different level from everything else that I've covered, and I'd go so far as to say from most music in general, it's unique and inventive and leaves you a different person than who you were before. If you made it to the end, thanks for sticking around. I know that last one is a pretty jarring note to end on, especially if you were unfamiliar with it. As a final note, I know a lot of people compare Kimi no Yuni to Crushed Mary, but it's not on this list because I just don't think it's done as well as Crushed Mary. To me, Kimi no Yuni is more so the equivalent of a jump scare, which is great if that's what gets you going, but I don't think it's nearly as impactful, though it did make me jump 7 feet in the air the first time I listened to it. I'm just mentioning it here anyway, so if that you don't know it and it sounds like something that might interest you, you sick freaks, then you can go find it yourself. It's not as well known as others, so I wanted to give it that little extra spotlight here, because it is unique compared to everything else that's being made. Thank you so much for spending this Halloween special with me. I hope you all enjoy being scared, and I'll see you very soon, as I actually paused the editing of another video to complete this one in a timely manner. So, I'll see you on the other side.